We see an opportunity to do what's right, to change business as usual, to become business as it should be, where people don't just live and work, they thrive. To do that, Colliers is committing to elevate the way we do business, to elevate the built environment. We will minimize environmental impacts in our own operations and through the services we provide our clients. We will increase diversity and inclusion in Colliers and across our procurement practices to create an atmosphere welcoming of diverse ideas and perspectives. We will promote health and well-being in our operations and through our client services to help improve lives. Together, we will elevate the built environment and build better for our collective future. For ourselves, for our clients, for our communities, for the world.
Before we begin, good afternoon, Sir Ed. So thank you again to the United Pangasinan ICT Council, the Province of Pangasinan, Department of Information and Communication Technology, the Academe of Pangasinan. So our host for today will be, our host and moderator is going to be Joey Bondoc. He's the head of research here in Colliers. So for any other questions beside Office BPO Outlook, so Joey covers industrial, residential, retail, all throughout the Philippines. So we're very happy that he's with us today. So you will have more insights on really what's happening in the Philippine real estate. Joey?
Thank you, Chris. And want to thank, of course, the landlord representation team for inviting me. I was really excited when I heard that Maricris's team is spearheading this event, because I've been to a lot of ICT events. Back in 2017, I was invited to be part of this ICT event nationwide. This was in Cagayan de Oro. I probably saw some of the members of the Pangasinan ICT there. So I was invited by Miss Jocelyn of Bacolod ICT Council. I met the head of Iloilo ICT, and then Grace Fabros also of Angeles City ICT Council. So it really started a lot of initiatives. The ICT at the time, I think, was just starting. So really, we were really able to pick the brains of ICT councils in one event. And it's amazing how the organization has grown and how the initiatives have really been implemented across the country. So I think this is an event that we believe will, be able to pick the brains of the Pangasinan ICT and, of course, Maricris's team members as well. Because in Metro Manila, for instance, we see a lot of BPO companies really expanding outside of the country's capital. In fact, if you look at deals in 2021, so Metro Manila accounted for 81% of total office space transactions, but the remaining 19% covered by the provinces. And out of the shares of these provinces, the total transactions across the Philippines, it's still the usual cities that covered much of the deals. We have Cebu, Iloilo, but it's interesting to see, how Pangasinan plans to cover much of the deals moving forward and plans to corner new office space deals. Of course, if you go outside of Metro Manila, you don't have to travel by plane. And given the construction of SCTEX, TPLEX, and Skyway 3, it's now much easier to travel, say from Makati or Fort Bonifacio to Pangasinan. So really, we hope to learn more, and we were really excited to know more about Pangasinan ICT's initiatives, and how do you intend to attract more investments, BPO investments moving forward? How do you plan to coordinate with the academe? Because I've been to Iloilo, I've been to Bacolod, Cagayan de Oro, and one common initiative of these ICT councils is the partnership. In Bacolod, they have the Negros ICT Academy, which allows them to invite willing college students to undergo certain training. And that has enabled them to also attract higher value outsourcing companies. But enough of me talking about how I learned about the initiatives of ICT Council. And I think we really can learn a lot of things from our guests this afternoon.
Thank you, Joey. Sir Ed, do you want to give opening remarks or thank you before we start with the webinar, Sir Ed? You're in mute, Sir Ed.
Thank you, Maricris, and the rest of the team from Colliers for initiating this presentation. I remember we had this presentation from the Gupan City when we talked to one of your clients, and actually that jump-started our efforts in the awareness that we really have a problem in terms of space, because just in the Gupan City alone and in the entire Pangasinan, it's really enlightenment that aside from the talents that we need to sell, we also need to have enough space to cater the business locators. And right now we are understanding that because of the direction of our President Duterte, encouraging all the BPOs to move to the countryside, there's an increasing demand. And so right now what we're doing is, because we relatively just started this council, and the personalities that Sir Bondoc has mentioned, Attorney Josel Batapasige, one of the pioneers of the NICP, because we're also a member of the National ICT Confederation, and actually the current president is in Palawan. So they've been very successful down in the south, Cebu, Davao, Cagayan de Oro, Zamboanga, Bacolod, Iloilo. They've been very successful there, even before the pronouncement of Duterte moving to the countryside. So we're just following their steps. And what we're doing right now is we've created various chapters in Pangasinan. We have Tagupan, Lingayen, and now we're starting San Carlos. We're also trying to reach out the LGUs of Ordaneta, and then in the hope that they'll be interested in putting up another chapter there as well. Because right now, what the key message that we want to deliver is to talk to the LGUs, because they're primarily our partners, and they should understand that there's a very big economic benefit if we pursue the IT-BPO industry, and to be presentable in that industry, we have to prepare all the arsenals, like the manpower. We have a lot of schools here. We need to improve the training. We have to improve our the internet, the infrastructure, the power, and also we have to encourage the real estate owners to invest in buildings and commercial spaces that fits into the requirements of the BPO. I just talked to a particular building owner and then encouraged them to pursue PESA accreditation. And the reply was they would apply a PESA if the client is sure. So I said, no, that's not the case. It has to be done right now, because that's one of the factors that will attract the business locators. They need to invest in this kind of certification because it will provide an incentive to the business locators, and it's a big plus. So right now, as I'm saying, and hopefully some of our participants here would have a connection in their locality and would know some of the property owners that they just mentioned that the business locators in the IT-BPO are really looking to move here in Pangasinan. And the only thing we need to do is to prepare for them, prepare for their arrival, and just lay down the red carpet, so saying.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The first time, well, my client is EXL Healthcare. I think that was the first client we brought to Pangasinan, and the reason they've really prioritized Pangasinan is the quality of healthcare workers because of the many
Yes, yes.
healthcare schools in Pangasinan, and really, it's a catch basin of qualified workforce for the healthcare BPO sector. And the number one challenge really in Pangasinan is the real estate component. There's no available BPO ready space in Pangasinan. So for Colliers, we are being proactive and reaching out to various stakeholders in Pangasinan and getting you guys really interested in taking advantage of this opportunity. It's like if you build it, they shall come. So that's why we're creating webinars such as these. We can create this quarterly and really, to really encourage every stakeholder in Pangasinan that there is really big potential of how BPO can really help Pangasinan in their continued progress and development. So with me in this webinar is Daniel Salapong. So he's our BPO expert. He's been in the BPO industry for 16 years. So I'll have Danes introduce himself. So he's the reason why we're here. So the main reason also we're in this webinar is to educate everyone in this call how Pangasinan can be competitive in really securing all these opportunities to the province. Danes?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So as Maricris mentioned, I'm Daniel Salapong. So prior to my stint here with Colliers, I was part of the IT-BPM industry. I was with the call center industry for close to 16 years. So worked initially with people support that transitioned into Aegis and became Teleperformance. So also most of the clients that we are currently handling are BPO stakeholders. So we brought some of them to you guys and did this webinar as well and interview so that they can assess whether Pangasinan would be a viable option for them. But I think, BPOs, the outsourcing industry, will really have a very huge impact in terms of bringing development outside of Metro Manila, because that is now the main thrust of the outsourcing industry and even the government to push for all of these developments into the provinces. So we're very happy to be here today to give you some insights, something that could be helpful in terms of preparing your localities, your provinces for the uptake of outsourcing activities into your location.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dane. So I'll start my presentation on the Q4 report on the office sector. Then after me, Danes will be presenting IT-BPO Outlook in 2022. Please feel free to in this chat box to send us your questions so Joey can read them after the presentations so we can address them. So, okay, let me share my screen. Hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes,
Okay.
Chris can see it.
Okay. So in a nutshell, what really happened for the office sector is increase and market transactions in Q4 compared to, even in 2020. So 2021 was a much better year. We expect 2022 to be a better year. We started the year with a surge in Omicron, so there's a bit of delay, but we are optimistic that the recovery will happen in 2022, really led by the outsourcing industry. We expect vacancy to peak in Metro Manila in 2022 because of the completions of delayed buildings in 2020 to 2021. So we're looking at an additional 900,000 square meters of space here in Manila. And because of the additional supply in the market, we expect further rent reduction in Metro Manila by 10%. So as shared, if you'll notice in Q3 2021, only 69,000 square meters of office transaction, almost doubled in Q4 at 134,000 square meter. So 2020 to 2021 saw an 18% increase in transactions. So here in Metro Manila, these are the completed buildings. So 37% of new supply was completed in Q4. So in Q4, 634,000 square meters total in 2021, which leads us to 12.94 million square meter of space in Metro Manila. So as shared in 2022, additional 900,000 square meter of additional space. Most of this space are coming in Ortigas Center. So Ortigas Center for the longest time has been, you haven't seen much development, but because of the new infrastructure projects in Ortigas, like the BGC Link Bridge that connects BGC and Ortigas, the train passing through Ortigas. So we see a lot of grade A lead building in Ortigas. That's why most of the transaction happened in 2021 was really in Ortigas, which will show later on. We have options also in the Bay Area, Fort Bonifacio. So supply in Metro Manila will plateau in 2023-2024 with approximately 600,000 square meters each in 2023-2024. So this is the office sector supply and demand. So we just wanted to highlight the PH national election. Normally when there's an election, there's a little bit of slowdown because of wait and see. So we expect that to happen this 2022. If you'll notice the negative number here, which is the negative 273,000 square meter, which this means that there's more vacated space than new take up of space. This is just the meaning of it. And so we really, the office sector was badly hit by the pandemic. So we saw a lot of non-renewals, smaller spaces, but we expect this to pick up this year. So as of Q4 of 2021, vacancy in Metro Manila is 15.7%, and we expect this to go up to 18.9% this 2022. So if you'll notice in 2017 to 2019, this is where we saw the highest transactions ever recorded in Philippine history. This is because of the entry of the POGOs, or the back office Chinese companies. So before, they were regulated under the Cagayan Ecozone Authority, but when President Duterte took over, he transferred the governing body to PAGCOR, which allows them to locate anywhere. That's why we've seen 1.3 million square meter of POGO spaces that entered the market during this time, as well as the BPO growth. So if you visualize 2 million square meter of space, this is approximately 67 buildings with 30,000 square meter per building. So our projection of absorption of the 67 buildings is 4 years. We highlighted here the PEZA stock, since most BPO companies would still prefer PEZA. So out of the 2 million square meter of stock in Metro Manila, 1 million is PEZA. So for upcoming supply, this 2022 to 2024, you've seen this 207,000 square meter pre-lease. So some companies like JP Morgan and other companies who are assured of their growth, they can even take the space while the building is under construction. So in terms of Pangasinan, we need just to see developments happening. We understand that landlords in Pangasinan would prefer a pre-lease, but BPO companies would want to see a plan, perspectives, so that they can actually visualize themselves, because I don't think there's a problem with manpower in Pangasinan. The infrastructure going to Pangasinan and LGU support, ICT Council supports there. What's really lacking in Pangasinan is the real estate component. That's why we are reaching out to all stakeholders in Pangasinan to be able to meet the right people, to really encourage them to build and take advantage of all these interests of BPOs in your province. So we've broken down the vacancy per CBD, so companies can visualize in terms of rental negotiations or for landlords where to build. So it's the first time we've actually seen double-digit vacancy across Metro Manila. So if you look at Alabang at 22%, Bay Area is at 23%. This is due to the POGO vacated spaces that happened during the pandemic. So here in Metro Manila, POGOs gravitate towards locations that have LGUs very friendly to POGOs. So aside from the PAGCOR permit, they'll be needing a letter of no objection permit. So this is really based on the how the LGU is open with POGOs. This shows you various rental rates in Metro Manila. So the blue rental rates represent the headline rates, and the red ones represent the transacted rates. So in 2020, because of the pandemic, we saw 17% rental reduction when the POGO entered, when the POGO transactions really happened in Metro Manila during the 2018 to 2017, 2019, the rental rates really skyrocketed. So we're seeing rental correction in the market. So 17% rental reduction in 2020, additional in 2021, plus an additional 10% this 2022. So as shared, before the pandemic happened, we had 1.3 million square meter of POGO space, approximately 11% share to the total office stock. So we're down to 5% of POGOs occupying the total stock in Metro Manila. So POGO committed space right now is 677,000 square meters. So we try to assimilate if POGOs were to come back in the Philippines, so the impact will really lessen the vacancy by 5%. So shared by Joey, out of the 2021 transactions that happened in the Philippines, 81% went to Metro Manila, led by the Ortigas CBD. So as mentioned, because of all the infrastructure and new buildings, green building options in Ortigas, as well as much lower rental rates compared to Makati. So we're seeing a lot of relocation, flight to cost move to the Ortigas and Fort Bonifacio. So 19% went to the provinces. This is led by Cebu, Iloilo, Pampanga. So we hope to see Pangasinan here in the coming years. So opportunities in provinces. So right now, Cebu has a high vacancy of 26% because of the many building completions, Pampanga at 17%. If you look at Iloilo, they're only at 7%. There's also a lack of BPO ready spaces in Iloilo. Iloilo also has a lot of good schools, a lot of healthcare schools that offer healthcare courses. So most of the healthcare BPOs also expanded in Iloilo. Bacolod is next, and Davao. So right now, PEZA has allowed work from home. The split is 90%, 10%. BPO companies have requested PEZA to extend this work from home until September of this year, but this is still under the review of the Fiscal Incentive Review Board. So we're still monitoring the decision on whether the Fiscal Incentive Review Board will approve this request of extension of BPOs until September. This government also has passed a lot of laws that will really encourage more investors to the Philippines. This is the reason why we want Pangasinan to really be ready. So the president signed the CREATE law. So the CREATE law, this really levels the playing field between the Board of Investment incentives and the PEZA incentives. So technically in this law, there's no more difference between PEZA and BOI. So for developments in Pangasinan, you don't need to be PEZA anymore to attract this BPO. So we're still waiting for the Strategic Investment Priorities Plan, which will be released by the FIRB by March or April to give more of the detailed implementing rules and guidelines of this CREATE law. The Public Sector Act, which is opening 100% foreign ownerships and telco, airline, railway, subway. So we need the Philippines to be more competitive in this, because right now the feedback we get from investors is it's the electrical costs and telco costs is still high compared to our other competitors in this industry, such as India. The Foreign Investments Act and the Retail Trade Liberalization Act. So all these laws really aim to bring in a lot of opportunities to the Philippines. So our recommendations for landlord is, right now, because of the pandemic, most of occupiers are really looking for green buildings to make sure that the building of the features are touchless and to really ensure the health and safety of the employees. Flexible with handover conditions. So before it was just bare handover condition, but because of the pandemic, occupiers are asking for a fitted option or warm shell option. So we recommend to landlords to be flexible on the required handover condition and really engaging tenants to accommodate what they need. It's really a win-win, and having an open communication with the occupiers and being flexible. Before the pandemic happened, it was a landlord's market. So landlords were very strict, very stringent with guidelines. But right now, because of the pandemic, there's more an open communication between landlords and occupiers, and really assess the market and see provincial expansion. So if Pangasinan would, would be working with us, would really love to introduce, Pangasinan as a potential site for expansions of our landlords that we work with. So for tenants, most tenants are getting shorter lease term. They're still assessing their new hybrid split. So we see shorter lease term now. And most of the offices have renovated the office to make it look more homey, to really encourage people to go back to the office, and open layout, as well as capitalize on new government regulations and look at really BCP sites. Look at the provinces as alternative BCP sites. Take advantage of rental corrections happening in the market and consider early renewals, if they have renewals that it will be open next year, to really take advantage of the situation. So I'll turn you over to Danes for the IT-BPO Outlook.
Thank you, Maricris. Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen, Maricris? Everyone?
Yes, we can see your screen, Danes.
All right. So thank you so much for having us over and discussing to you what we see would be the major trends for BPOs moving forward from 2022 onwards. So the BPO industry has always had a very good reputation. They started in the late 1990s and grew exponentially. Right now, the BPO industry is looking at a 29 billion revenue US dollars and employing about 1.3 million full-time employees in the Philippines. And even with the pandemic, they were very resilient. Most of the companies still grew by almost 2%, 3% for the pandemic years. So this slide was shown to you earlier by Maricris, but we'd like to highlight it again. So why is the provincial locations very important? Because most of the transactions for BPOs actually happen outside of Metro Manila. In fact, if you look at this 19% provincial transaction, most of these are from the outsourcing and the BPO market. So just to give you a breakdown of what happened in Metro Manila. So this is the 81%, 154,000 square meters of office space was taken up by the BPO sector. But in the province, this is around 76,000 square meters. Notable transactions of these BPOs were in Cebu, in Iloilo, in Pangasinan, in Pampanga. And the notable accounts that expanded in the provinces were Concentrix, Valor Global, Madrigal, and Tascas. So what do we see happening in the future? Where do we see BPOs going to? So we see that there will be a transformation in the way BPOs do their work, do their transactions. And right now, the Philippines is number one when it comes to voice support, especially for the English language market. But we don't want to remain just stuck in the voice support category. We want to take a bigger chunk of the pie in the outsourcing world. So what's going to happen next with BPOs is they would take on more complex skills, more complex activities, and more complex work so that they can continue to grow and get a bigger share of the outsourcing market. So with this in mind, we will see the rise of artificial intelligence. So this is also developed here in the Philippines. We have companies that are doing research and development in AI. And what this will contribute to the outsourcing industry is that it will automate most of the clerical, repetitive, and administrative jobs that are being handled by some of the BPO workers. So there was a fear initially that a lot of people saying that what's going to happen once we do automation, artificial intelligence implementations? Will a lot of people lose their jobs? In all frankness, there will be some some attrition because of this. A lot of employees will need to skill up in order to gain more experience and more skills so that they can move from the administrative, repetitive kinds of jobs and go to the higher, more complex work that the outsourcing industry is looking for. So AI, we're already seeing this. We see this happening right now in the different industries. You already are starting to see automation in manufacturing, even in consumer products, even with some of the outsourcing work being done in the Philippines. The automation and AI is already playing a part. Wherein, for example, you have legal contracts. An artificial intelligence can view and compare and make sure that all of these contracts are consistent and marks all of the differences between different contracts, and they can do it in a split of a time. So also we're seeing the rise of virtual artificial assistants, and this is a trend that will go into automation. So workers that are handling this right now will need to skill up so that they can handle higher value work in the future. What are the other innovations that we're seeing that would transform BPOs? It's big data analytics. So what big data is all about is just a lot of data, consumer data analysis, and we know that data is always key. This would be data that tracks and data that you collect from consumers, from their spending habits, from their online habits. You track people and consumers across multiple channels. So you can create more targeted approaches in terms of marketing and in terms of fulfilling a consumer experience. But in all of this, the BPO segment in the country was always present and very successful because people still needed to interact with other people. So in the Philippines, this has been one of our greatest assets, that we are very warm, we're very friendly, and our customers, our overseas customers, would appreciate that they get to talk to us and interact with us because they still long for that human touch. And the Filipinos have been very, very good in exemplifying that. So what major trends do we need to watch out for? What's over the horizon that we see will affect outsourcing? So it was already mentioned by Maricris and even by Joey and even by Sir Ed. We're seeing hybrid work, and we're seeing that hybrid work will prevail. If you're not too familiar with hybrid, what this means is that companies that usually have a 5-day work week will really transition. Some of them will just do a 2-day work week and have the 3 remaining days at home or work anywhere. And this is going to be the trend moving forward. In fact, some of the outsourcing companies that we are now engaged with are asking us to help them look for spaces that can help with their employees when it comes to hybrid work. So the creation of multi-sites, the creation of small offices that are near the areas where their employees live at. So aside from hybrid, which is a combination of on-site and off-site work, we know now that because of current surveys and also from interviews with BPO clients, that the work from home setup will continue. And it looks like it might also be permanent. In fact, we have companies that are doing the rounds of recruitment in different cities and in different provinces. And even if in these provinces they don't have an office space, they are hiring employees and having them do full-time permanent work from home employment. So this is something that we need to watch out for. Right now, it was mentioned that initially when we were having conversations with BPO clients that were looking at Pangasinan, and we were asking about the existence of office spaces, commercial spaces where they can have offices. There wasn't huge amounts of these spaces ready for the BPO industry. But with the changes brought about by the pandemic, we might see that, these companies might start looking at smaller footprints, looking at maybe a 500 square meter requirement, but multiple sites within a certain city so that it can handle the work from home and the hybrid work models of the BPO industry. So as mentioned by Maricris, we're still watching out for what will be the final decision regarding the PESA work from home mandates. And once that's finalized, we will know whether all of the BPOs will return back to work by end of March this year, or if their extension request will be granted, and they will stay on and continue work from home until September of this year. What else are we seeing? So as mentioned, we are going to be seeing a lot of inquiries for smaller offices, microsites, 500 square meters, 1,000 square meters, near commercial areas or near residential areas. So we already are seeing this in Pampanga and in Davao. We're seeing our BPO customers that usually take up 2,000, 4,000 square meters now asking us for 500 square meters and 1,000 square meter sites. So for the different businesses in the provinces, if you have existing spaces, let's say malls that are underutilized or even old F&B, food and beverage, restaurant facilities that are not in operations, maybe these sites can be converted and can be leased out to the different BPOs. The BPOs will take on this space and will usually use it as a central hub wherein they will have their recruitment, where they will have their HR, where they will have their IT and facilities team. So what else do we need to look out for and watch out for with this new normal that we're seeing? I think because of that, what's happening with work from home and with the pandemic, we will see that the outsourcing industry will look at other formats of real estate. Right now, we are seeing interest for some outsourcing companies looking at Davao, but not asking for office space, but instead asking for houses with 3 bedrooms or condominiums that can house temporarily their HR team so that they can do recruitment from that area and also have them work from home in that area. So also with what's happening now with the Create Law and PEZA, we are seeing more interest for even non-PEZA sites. So it's a little bit optimistic for a lot of small developers that they can create spaces just as long as it meets the standards of companies that they can go into and really try and compete for the outsourcing business. So the last thing that we find very interesting right now as a possible trend for the outsourcing industry in the Philippines is the possibility of the multi-generational employment. So we have BPOs that are looking at, rather than having their offices in traditional office spaces, they would look at residential spaces, as mentioned earlier, and they can tie up these areas and offer it to the employees because technically it will be the companies that are offering the spaces and paying for it, but the employees that are assigned to the space can actually volunteer and talk with their company and have these spaces, half of which they can pay for and they can provide equity. So the space becomes, in later years, it becomes the property of the employee. It can become a come-on for employees so that they can look at it as an added benefit of their employment. And because if they want to stay in that space, it can be a factor wherein their offsprings or even people that are within their family that are staying in that space can also be part of that outsourcing company. So what do the provinces need to do in preparation for the trends of outsourcing? So it's very similar to what Sir Ed already mentioned earlier, because we're seeing that more and more interests are going into the provinces. So these provinces just need to be ready and make sure that they have available labor, that they have the infrastructure, you have reliable and redundant power and telco capabilities. And your province scores very highly in terms of natural disaster resiliency. Also, it's worth mentioning that most of the BPOs right now are also being mandated by their global headquarters to look at sustainability. Some of them are being mandated to be on renewable energy in 5 years from now. So we are encouraging other provinces, other LGUs as well, to look at incentivizing developers who are creating green infrastructures so that this can also match the requirements of the outsourcing industry. For the local government, we would like to ask, of course, to continue looking at your tax incentives by looking at giving additional tax holidays to outsourcing companies coming into your province. There are also other provinces that have offered exclusivity. We've seen this done in Bataan, we've seen this done in Palawan. So if you see a first mover BPO company going into your province, it's something worth mentioning that you can offer exclusivity. It can be time bound or it can be performance bound. So also we encourage our provincial sites, provincial partners to have a very strong ICT council partner, ICT presence, and so that you can be very prepared and ready for the influx of the outsourcing industry. As mentioned earlier, incentivize building green, similar to what Quezon City has been doing. So if it's something that you can integrate into your local code, please do so. For the academe, for the schools that we have in the different provinces, you have to play a very important role when it comes to addressing the labor that will be required for the outsourcing industry. So you can get in touch and coordinate and collaborate with the different outsourcing companies coming into your province and create an outsourcing curriculum. You need to tap their expertise and create strong focus on not just call center skills, but also the different types of outsourcing activities being done at the moment. So we're talking about call center, health and wellness, we're talking about animation, we're talking about software development, and all of those other outsourcing activities. Also, get in touch with your BPOs and outsourcing companies so that you can do recruitment runs within your organizations to tap even doing internship programs, and even recruitments for those that will be graduating from their degrees. That's the end of my presentation. We now open the floor for any questions.
Thank you, Danes and Maricris, for those insightful presentations. I think we still don't have questions in our chat box, but we have participants from Ilocos, so from San Carlos, from Iloilo. But just to jumpstart this Q&A and this open forum, Chris had a very insightful presentation on what's happening in Metro Manila office market and how BPOs have been expanding. And of course, Danes mentioned upskilling. Sir Ed also discussed earlier what's happening in Pangasinan and the initiatives that they have been implementing. But let me start with Chris. You are representing landlords, but and Sir Ed earlier mentioned that they've yet to really see developers maximizing opportunities in Pangasinan. From the side of the landlords, Chris, what do you think should Pangasinan ICT do or implement for them to entice more developers and let them know that there are opportunities for these developers to locate in Pangasinan, to start developing office buildings and start housing all these large BPO companies, especially if they intend to expand outside Metro Manila?
Yes, thank you, Joey. So really, Sir Ed, what we can do also, how Colliers help you, is we can gather all the, landowners in Pangasinan, so we can also help them on identifying properties we think would be a good fit for BPOs. Also for some BPOs, well, there's a new industry coming in also right now, which is the data center industry, and they're also looking for land lease. So if Sir Ed, you can really gather all the landlords of Pangasinan and really sharing properties that we can offer not only to BPOs but to data centers, then we can offer this, because for data center is they can do a land lease and they can actually do the actual build. So I think one of the hindrance really of setting up landlords in Pangasinan setting up a building in Pangasinan is the capex limitation, and we can help with that. Maybe we can also do a joint venture between a landowner in Pangasinan and one of the major developers here in Metro Manila. So there's a lot of collaborations that we can do here, Sir Ed.
Okay, so at pre-pandemic, of course, now we're doing all these webinars, Zoom conferences, but pre-pandemic was the Pangasinan ICT Council active in mounting roadshows, in presenting to potential developers to start building in Pangasinan. Did you see these initiatives from the local government of Pangasinan?
Well, we when we started, we actually the UPICT was formed 2019, but we've been very active since 2015.
Okay.
And starting from that year, we've just been focused on training. We conducted conferences, seminars. It's just at this point that we've realized this another aspect that we should also consider, like which is now we're realizing is one of the most important, which is the infrastructure. So we've had starting last year, I did some projects that really caters to the real property developers. We had talks where we invited PEZA officers explaining the benefits of an accredited PEZA building. And so we've been asking for PEZA property developers all over Pangasinan. But well, I'm noticing that we're not able to, get much of their attention. So right now, actually, while you were all presenting, I was thinking of what else can we do? Maybe it's like we can do like an IT-BPO developer network event, something like that. Probably by the end of the year, where we're all okay for a face-to-face. But at least at the moment, we're pushing for more activities attracting the property developers. I did ask the LGU, asking the whom to ask from their office where to get in touch with these developers, and that's still a work in progress. I don't know actually who holds the database, if it's the LGU or the DTI, probably DTI. Anyway, those are the things that we just need to do at this point. So right now, what I'm getting is from the past engagement is the infrastructure. So right now we're focusing on that.
Yes, I agree. Certainly a lot of infrastructure projects gravitating towards northern central part of Luzon. And of course, Pangasinan should benefit from those public projects. Danes earlier mentioned, it was a good presentation on the BPO sector in the Philippines, the revenues that they've been generating and contributing to the Philippine economy. But Danes is a BPO veteran and probably saw how the services of these BPO companies evolved, from the typical voice services, back office, to the more sophisticated software engineering, healthcare information management. Danes, as a BPO veteran and now as someone who represents landlords, how should the Pangasinan ICT Council move, or how should they promote the higher value ICT skills? I know that some ICT councils have really been proactive in educating college students or those who are interested to learn software engineering, which are eventually employed by the BPO company. So what should they implement? What modules, perhaps, or programs should they implement during the college day of students, so that they are equipped with the skills required for these higher value ICT companies?
Thank you very much, Joey. Because yeah, you're right. Usually before, when BPOs went to a provincial site, they would just ask the academe, they would ask the LGU to create curriculum that was more specific just on language, just on English. But right now, that's not just what outsourcing is all about. We're seeing outsourcing moving on to the complex work, what you've mentioned, healthcare, animation, software programming. So these are things that, the LGU should also promote, get in touch with their their counterparts in education, and promote animation, you promote the creatives, promote coding, promote software. The STEM curriculum is really very important, because now outsourcing is not just about language. It's not just about English. It's about being able to provide higher quality work. And I think that's the next step for the BPO industry.
Thank you, Dane. So from one veteran, I jumped to another veteran, Maricris. um, you've seen these companies expanding, and do you really see this trend moving towards the less skilled, or I'd say the back office operations, to the higher value BPO services? And what's the trend? Do you see more health information management companies expanding, or is it really the software engineering, the legal transcription services that are aggressively expanding here in the Philippines?
Yeah, thank you, Joey. So for everyone, I started my real estate career in Eastwood. We were the first ICT parks that have actually seen the growth really of BPO in the Philippines since 1998. So shared by Dane, since he was also ID 66, I think, in Aegis BP support. So when we were selling Eastwood before it back in 1998, we really need to sell why the Philippines. When BPO companies would go to Asia, they'd go country hopping, and the number one competitor really that time was India. So before we could even sell Eastwood City, we really need to sell why the Philippines. So when BPO started entering the Philippines, so you're correct, they started with voice. But if you look at all the last transactions that happened in Q4, these are the likes of JP Morgan, these are the likes of American Express, you have ING shared service, we have the Mercedes-Benz shared service. So as mentioned by Dave, we are securing already a much higher value chain of back office. So it's not only just voice, but requires critical thinking. So it's really important for the Philippines to stay competitive in terms of the quality of workforce that we offer. And one of the strengths really of Pangasinan is your healthcare graduate. This has been, the number one province that is always, in the short list of our healthcare BPO. So, Sir Ed, we brought EXL there, and you were really the number one top choice. And that time, there's only one PEZA BPO in Ordaneta, but the floor plate is only 350 square meter. So this is a limitation. That's why we want to be able to have these dialogues regularly with you, to also ensure that any developments that happen in Pangasinan will be assured that these are BPO specs, BPO ready, so we don't waste resources. So we can also advise landlords on how to build this buildings to be BPO ready. It has to be functional as well. So yeah, so a lot of opportunities really, especially with technology. The pandemic has really fast tracked the future of work. So, and it's benefiting the Philippines. We've seen more BPOs that has expanded in the Philippines. So shared, Danes just closed 8,000 square meters this January. Imagine a BPO expanded 8,000 square meters during a pandemic. Last year also, I closed 10,000 square meter in Pampanga. Also an expansion that happened during the pandemic. So we see a lot of opportunities in BPO that will really drive the recovery of the Philippines during these times.
Thank you, Chris. So we have some participants. We have Randolph Tejada, Sonia Ong, and Mr. Edgardo Castro, who mentioned perhaps we can spin off on the micro BPO model program, shared facility, etc. Can be part of the networking event said by Sir Ed. So we will definitely take note of that. And of course, Maricris and Danes who are actively promoting developers and the BPOs will also take that into consideration. But you mentioned shared services. So this is a very interesting segment also of the Philippine BPO. Do you see companies expanding or locating in Pangasinan as part of their business continuity plans? I mean, we saw this during the pandemic. So if something happens in Metro Manila, they want to locate outside of Metro Manila just so they have other facilities that can function in case, say, an earthquake affects a Metro Manila operation. So do you see this as a possibility, companies considering Pangasinan as part of their BCPs or business continuity plans? Chris, Dane,
definitely. I think Cytel already has started hiring for work from home. in Pangasinan. So it means you have the infrastructure ready if Saitel is there just hiring for work from home. So I think really the first step is to get a site ready for this, or maybe a service office that can provide seats that BPO can start with.
Yeah,
I think
Dane.
from a BCP standpoint, Pangasinan is very high in the score for possible sites for BCP. I remember when we were doing this exercise for my former outsourcing company, we were looking at finding a location where we can have our business continuity facility. And the parameters were, it needs to be close enough, but far enough from Metro Manila, close enough that we don't need to take a plane to go to that area, but far enough so that anything that happens in Metro Manila, this location can still be resilient. So the identified areas during that time were Bulacan, Pampanga, but looking at the geography and the flooding incidents in Bulacan, it was not considered. They looked at Pampanga. At that time, there wasn't much development. The international airport wasn't renovated yet, and there were no new roads during that time. But now, that's already present. So Pangasinan also has been identified as a very good BCP location. And I think we just need to make sure that facilities are there. The BCP component of outsourcing companies is kind of different. They might take on a site and not have employees right away in that site, and it only becomes active when there is an emergency. However, we've also seen models wherein they take on a site and they mention that it is their BCP site, but they have a small contingent of operations and accounts being serviced out of that facility. So I think that's also the gameplay that Pangasinan can take a look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Danes. Sir Ed, do you have partnerships with certain universities? I've spoken with Tony Josel from Bacolod, Joven from Iloilo, Miss Grace Fabros from Angeles Clark ICT Council. And they told me that these existing ICT councils have active partnerships with universities with certain specializations on software engineering, healthcare information management, the game software development. They also have these programs for your local universities or colleges in Pangasinan.
Actually, sir, late last year, we've been working with the LGU of Dagupan City because, as you've known, Pangasinan has been granted with 2 digital cities. One is Ordaneta and one is Dagupan City. So as part of the activity in preparing for the digital cities, we went ahead and did some road mapping. And we've invited partners from the educational institutions. We have in Dagupan FINMA, University of Pangasinan FINMA network, and also Lyceum. And I think we also have partners at the major universities in Dagupan City, like University of Luzon and Colegio de Dagupan. So, but those are just the major schools in Dagupan City. But if you go out, you can find state universities in Lingayen, near San Carlos. I think there's one in Bayambang. So we didn't have enough visibility in Ordaneta because until now we've yet to create a chapter there, and sadly the preparation for Ordaneta in the Digital Cities program, it haven't really started. So we're only gearing for the Dagupan City at the moment. So we're not familiar with how many schools we can tap in there in Ordaneta City. We're kind of hoping, or we're thinking that Ordaneta would, overrun the rest of the cities because it's proximity to the Tiplex,
Okay.
much nearer to Manila, given the geography. But the Dagupan City has, I think, relatively more schools, more manpower in terms of, and we have the stable electricity and a lot of network or internet providers. So it's one of the edge of it. So, well, in terms of partnership, yes, we can easily, we already have not just an institutional partnership, but personal, because we already have contacts inside the school. And whenever we have events, we can easily get in touch with them. So, but the question of, is there already a MOA or understanding, or if UPICT has already influenced the schools to pick on a certain skill to teach, to train. We have not reached that point. And actually, right now, we don't know how to start that with, because in order to even suggest that, it we should be backed up by an actual company that really requires it, right? We don't want to be just guessing at this point. So we are really we look forward to some BPO companies that would want to get in touch with us, and they can ask for a specific skill, and then we can, work this out with the schools so they can tailor fit their curriculum, and with the assurance that, hey, someone's gonna, harvest these talents afterwards. So we're not there yet, and so that's what that would be a great news to us. At least we have something to bring to the table when we talk to these academics. Uh, that's what we're preparing right.
Thank you, Sir Ed. So no questions yet in our chat box, but we're a little over 2 months away from the next elections, and without being too political, I want to ask Sir Ed, do you have a wish list for the next administration? What can they do? Or how can they assist your council, Pangasinan ICT Council, in terms of attracting more BPO investments and further honing the skills of your BPO or IT workforce?
Well, when we created the UPICT, I had uh, I had designed it quite different from the other councils, where I envisioned a lot of chapters within Pangasinan, because we have a very large area and only one functioning council. It will not work. We won't be able to cover the entire space. So we're creating a lot of chapters, and to do that, we have to create a strong partnership with our governor, and that's what we're seeing right now, where we did a number of projects already under the leadership of the governor, and they're very supportive. We are receiving 100%, and actually, we already have plans, and sometimes, one of it is the creation of an innovation studio. So we're just looking for a blueprint before we present it to the governor. From his staff alone, Sir Mo, we're just waiting for that information, and then we're ready to present. And in Bugalyon, they're developing the Pangasinan Convention Center. So that's also another growth area. So I think with the current direction of our provincial government, they when we presented the ICT vision, the ICT mission, they embraced that idea, and then it's a green light. So it's just a matter of things to do right now. So we have the support, but what we're looking for is a strong partnership with the business community, because in the academy we can easily reach them, because if you have the directive from the DepEd, the CHED, we have a strong partnership with the ICT as well, so that can be easily done. But I think we're struggling with the business sector, the real property, and so right now, while we're preparing for some plans for manpower training, as I said, we're also looking for opportunities to network with these other partners in the infrastructure. So right now, in terms of well, we just had a courtesy meeting with the mayor of Lingayen, Mayor Leopoldo Batawil, is very enthusiastic, and his grand plan is to make that town a smart town. So each time I meet an LGU leader which has the political will, that will really makes a difference, because the primary partner of an ICT is the LGU. A council doesn't have its own funds, so we can only just help with, providing advice, creating projects, and sharing our expertise. I have a lot of directors. Sir Ed Castro in the call is also a director of UPICT, and he's actually going to lead the San Carlos chapter. So he just joined us, and we're hoping more entrepreneurs like Sir Ed Castro would join the ICT Council as well, because that will signify growth. So right now, we're more on, at least for myself, more on learning. Just like in this event, I'm learning a lot from what you have presented. And because when you get more information, then that's the time you can create an effective strategy, because these plans will take long. And if you don't craft a good strategy, it will be a waste of time. So just you can say that we're not really rushing things. We're just learning at this point and listening to our role models, the successful ICTs. I always keep in touch with them. We have a group chat. There's a continuous learning, and we are really looking at them and asking for guidance at this point.
Thank you, Sir Ed. We also learned a lot from you, and I myself learned a lot from this webinar, of course, that was spearheaded and organized by Maricris's team, the landlord representation team. So before we conclude, I just also want to ask Maricris, Danes, to provide a few words, and what do we look forward to? What should we look forward to, and how can we further promote Pangasinan as the next ICT BPO hub in the countryside? So I'll start with Danes, Maricris, and then Sir Ed for the concluding words. Danes?
Yeah, so I think, outsourcing is here to stay, and it's going to grow even bigger than before. It's going to grow exponentially. And what our message would be is really for the provinces like Pangasinan to be ready. And I think you will be given a very good boost because you're part of the digital cities list of the DICT, and the IT-BPO will be releasing their new road plan for the next 6 years, and it's going to be submitted to the new government in June. So I think you guys are part of that. So you need to really be prepared for what's about to happen. Pangasinan has the infrastructure, you have the labor, and it's really important. The human capital is really one of the first things that our outsourcing companies look for, and you already have that. We just need to find that willing business match, an entrepreneur that can create the facility so that we can take on the requirements in Pangasinan.
Thank you, Danes. Chris?
Yeah, so thank you again, Sir Ed. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar. So our message really here as Colliers is we're here to help. We're here to guide Pangasinan in whatever capacity we can. We want to be with you in building that, the real estate component in Pangasinan, and please do share with us your plans, especially on Lingayen, being a smart town. We want to be the first to really market Pangasinan as a destination for BPO companies. We're a believer of Pangasinan, and the greatest resource really of Pangasinan is its workforce, and the infrastructure is there. It's really getting more landlords in Pangasinan to believe in it, that if you build it, they shall come. So it's really getting that confidence to the landlords of Pangasinan to build. And yeah, so we're here, Sir Ed. Let's have an open conversation. We can do this quarterly, and we hope to be part of this journey with Pangasinan to ensure your presence and getting a fair share of opportunities in the BPO and data center industry.
Thanks,
Thank you again.
Chris.
Joey?
Thanks, Chris. Sir Ed?
Okay, thank you once again, Ma'am Maricris, Sir Daniel, and Sir Joey, and thank you to all the participants. And probably the message, this thing I keep on saying whenever I encourage people to join the council, I always mention how successful the councils are in the southern part of the Philippines, Cebu, Davao, Bacolod. The next best IT hubs are down the south. So I I always ask the question, what's happening with Luzon, the rest of outside of NCR or the northern Luzon? And what I notice in the south is they have a strong regionalism, and they have it's normal for them or it's natural for them to organize. So I think just a words of encouragement is uh, we just need to organize. We just need to have a lot of uh, willing volunteers to help us in this movement. We can say it movement because right now the ultimate goal is to create a lot of jobs here in Pangasinan. And once we all see that vision, see that mission, and when we embrace it, we'll realize it not just the LGU or the academy, but all the professionals, the entrepreneurs. We can all give our part into this movement. So I'd say.
Thank you,
Thank
Sir
you.
Ed. Thank you. This has been a very insightful webinar. Of course, Dane's very optimistic with the upskilling of the BPO sector here in the Philippines, and really exciting over the next 2 to 3 years what we will be experiencing and what we will be gaining in terms of new investments in the BPO ICT sector here in the Philippines. And of course, we hope that Pangasinan benefits from these new investments. Of course, Maricris also is representing a lot of landlords, and we hope that we bridge that gap between the supply, the availability of workforce, and the availability of spaces, office buildings that are willing to house all these BPO companies that will be locating here in Pangasinan. And we hope that we get a first move advantage with the proposed smart city or town by Sir Ed. So we're really looking forward to having a partnership with the Pangasinan ICT Council, firming up this partnership that we hope really kickstarts the development of Pangasinan BPO segment. So this has really been a very fruitful discussion. And speaking of fruitful, I believe that Pangasinan is a low-hanging fruit when it comes to the BPO locations, and it's really just waiting for that perfect time to bloom as an ICT hub outside of Metro Manila. So thank you to our participants, and to those that dialed in this afternoon. I just want to promote our Colliers Insights podcast. My colleague Maricris here was featured, so we would share snippets of what's happening in the BPO sector, in the property market. So I do encourage you to check it out. We also have social media sites. So we have a website, we have LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and also on YouTube snippets of our previous videos, and some self promotion here. So I also write a column for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, so please check it out. I do and write columns on what's happening in the property market and what's the latest, and how should investors, stakeholders, and developers cash in on the opportunities in the property space. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Again, I'm Joey Bondoc, Head of Research at Colliers Philippines, and hopefully you can join us in our future presentation. So looking forward to your participation as well. Thank you guys, and good afternoon.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.